Welcome to Stepdad Success, turning the tide on the way stepdads are seen and show up in the world. We're a new breed of leaders raising leaders. Blood or no blood, we raise them as our own. We're connected, loving, and committed to leading them into the future. If you asked a normal dad, he'd say we're doing the impossible. He'd say, but they're not yours. How do you do it? Yet every day, stepdads around the world are forging the way. That's what we call Stepdad Success. We're leaders raising leaders. And these are our stories.
Good afternoon, Stepdads. This is James Clabassa for Stepdad Success, and today we have another interview on the table, and this time it's with Deric Keller, and he actually owns 4 car dealerships out of Rock Springs, and today we're going to be chatting about his stepkids. He's got 2 at this present time and has a background in football, wrestling, baseball. Obviously, quite a sporty guy, I would imagine. Marine Corps, married, divorced, married again. It's going to be a good discussion today, guys. Welcome, Deric. Thanks for jumping on the line, mate. Really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, no problem.
Hey, Deric, let's just get clear, because I know I asked you earlier before, we chatted before the conversation here, but it's Rock Springs,
Wyoming.
Wyoming, that's what I forgot. Rock Springs, Wyoming.
Yes,
Wyoming makes me think of bears.
Yeah, we have bears.
Mate, great to have you, as I said. Obviously, we know each other through the Wake Up Warrior movement and the brotherhood there, and I'm looking forward to meeting you in a few weeks' time. But just for the guys out there listening, just give us a quick background of yourself. What was your upbringing and how did you get to where you are now?
Okay. I grew up here between Rock Springs, Wyoming, and I've actually moved around a little bit as a child. I was born in Utah, moved to Colorado, then moved to Wyoming. My dad was a miner. My parents were actually divorced when I was 10. So I grew up with step parents and kind of seen it from both sides. Left for the Marine Corps after high school. Got married while I was in the Marine Corps. Had a couple of kids. Came back. Was divorced. And ended up selling cars here in Rock Springs and just worked my way up to now I'm the sales director of 3 locations of cars and 1 location of RVs. I've been doing it for 14 years. Just about in January of this year is when I realized that I was having some different issues and signed up for Wake Up Warrior and met you, and here we are.
Fun times. So I just want to kick back there to what you said earlier about you actually had step parents yourself, and now you're a step parent. Tell me what it was like back in those early days. Obviously, your parents split, I don't know the full story there, but what was it like for you? What was your experience of being a step child?
So the dynamic was a whole lot different because it felt like they were kind of intruding on my space is the way that I felt all the time. Like my stepmom and I had a terrible relationship back then because just that, I felt like it was me and my dad against the world, and then this lady comes in and dad doesn't really have the time for me anymore.
Yeah, wow. Interesting.
So our relationship now is a whole lot different, but back then it was tough.
Yeah, it's interesting because we don't, and I talk to a lot of stepdads on this podcast, but I don't talk to many talk to many of the kids, and I plan on doing that in the future. But getting that perspective from yourself is interesting because we don't know how the kids are feeling. We're just trying to do our best as stepdads. But that must give that must give you an interesting perspective when you're dealing with your own kids and you've got 2 step kids now.
Yep.
Tell me kind of how do you think that's affected your own parenting, being able to see it from that other side?
So I guess the dynamic is a little bit different because I was a little bit older when when I ended up as a step kid. So I kind of knew the dynamic of my parents being together and everything.
Sure.
I came in when my daughters were 1 and 5. And
right.
So they've only really known me as dad.
Sure.
Their dads aren't really involved a whole lot. They've kind of been in some trouble, in and out of jail, in and out of prison, and just ran into, one of the tough things that I've ran into was, now that they're older, my oldest is 18 and the other one is 14. She'll be 15 actually here in a couple days. But as they're getting older, they're wanting to know who their other dad was. And it was tough for me letting these guys come into my world. So again, I got defensive. They're in my world. But I tried to be a whole lot different as far as, like, I let my oldest, when she turned 16, I let her dad take her on her first drive in the car that I bought her. Just because I don't know, I wanted her to know that it was okay, that I wasn't going to attack her for wanting to know him or anything like that. I just wanted her to know that I loved her and I was her dad regardless.
Yeah.
And that's actually, I don't know, I'm pretty sure I told you that she's actually the one, when she turned 18, changed her last name to my name.
Wow.
So
nice. Yeah. It's interesting. Like, I was just kind of thinking, especially, how were you at that time? Obviously, you're kind of wanting to reassure her and just show your support with her, but what was going on inside you in that moment where you're like, okay, I'm handing over this, new car and my daughter or your stepdaughter to a man that's, possibly just come out of prison and no judgment
right.
there. Everyone has their own path and, but how were you feeling, letting go of that situation, knowing that, again, you've got those feelings bubbling up from being younger and, someone else is coming into your world and taking over?
That's what actually stopped me, was them feelings that I was having as a kid, is because I didn't want her to have them feelings. I didn't want her to, because essentially what she was feeling is that, like, he was the stepdad, he was the intruder, the
right.
same as I was.
Right.
But I wanted to set her mind at ease and let her try to build a relationship and be open to a relationship. So it was, so, I mean, and that's kind of the dynamic that I feel like we have to have as regular parents along with the step parents, is you have to be able to support and help nurture that relationship. If you're causing pain and making it hard on them, then all it does is make it harder,
Mm. Yeah. It's it's funny, like, excuse me, the conversation of Stephen Covey saying, as parents, we're teaching our grandkids. It goes along those same lines as, what we pass down to our kids now, will carry on into their life and they get to pass it down. And, I'm a big believer of, we've got a choice. We get to stop that sort of behaviour where we are now as adults and not pass that down. And it's great to hear that you kind of had that awareness to go, shit, like, I don't need to pass this along. And it's very easy for people to go, you know what, I was pissed off at the time, I didn't feel right, I'm going to do the same, I'm going to make them feel that way. It's very easy for, just out of anger and guilt and shame and blame and all of that stuff, to build up and have us pass down a poor belief. But it's great to, to hear that you had the awareness and that sort of thing to go, okay, I'm stopping the story here. That's a big
Right.
thing.
Yeah, a lot of, it's of course subconscious when you start doing shit like that and trying to push people. You start making the same mistakes that your parents might have made, or your grandparents, or just the things that are embedded into you that can cause pain. I mean, the Marine Corps caused me a lot of pain, and I came back from the Marine Corps and not really knowing how to have the emotion or things that the kids need. The loving, smiling, happy, trying to. I thought just raising kids was just going to work and bringing home a paycheck, providing them a house and food and things like that. I didn't really realize all the things that I do are getting embedded in them and teaching them how to live their lives.
Sure.
Until recently.
Tell me, how long were you in the Marine Corps?
4.5 years.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's a different world. I mean, I'm assuming it's a different world simply because I haven't been in there myself, but I've heard a lot about it, and obviously there's a lot of people suffering coming out of the Marines and just the Army in general, and coming back to normal life and then picking up 2 kids. We didn't really go into this, but how did you and your current wife meet, and how did you go about meeting the kids? You said they were quite young.
So, right. My wife and I were, we actually dated in junior high and high school. So we knew each other already. And when I came back from the Marine Corps, she worked at the coffee shop across the street from me. And I just went over there and got coffee every day, and we started talking and started dating again.
Yeah.
The 2 kids were kept from me for the most part for like the first couple months of our dating until it was comfortable. When she was comfortable, I was comfortable, and then they were brought in.
Yep.
But,
and I was going to say, what was like? You said they were quite young. I was in a similar situation. My 2 boys were 18 months and 3 years. What was their kind of initial reaction to you, and has there been any funny experiences as they're growing up and realizing that you're not their dad?
We've always let them know that I'm not their dad. They just know me as the dad. And nobody ever told them to call me dad. They've all made that decision on their own. The 1-year-old, when she's going to be 15, but when she was 1, she actually used to call me by my full name. She would call me Deric Richard Keller. So everywhere we went, it was Deric Richard Keller. She just thought that was my name, and she called me that for probably 2 years. And it was tough, the dynamic with my other kids. So like when these 2 did start calling me dad, that's where it got tough for the other kids. Was it bothered them, and then it bothered these guys that I had these other kids coming in calling me dad. They were like, "Wait a minute, no, he's not your dad. He's our dad." They didn't they didn't really understand that I could be all their dad.
Right. And how's the dynamic? How's the dynamic between them? Like now?
Oh, they're closer than close. I mean, my oldest son lives in Nashville, Tennessee, and him and my oldest daughter are on the phone, texting, calling once a day. They talk more than I do.
Right. So quite close. That's great.
Yeah.
And in those younger years when they're kind of calling you, by your first name, I still get that. I haven't got a dad yet, and that's totally cool with me.
Right.
Like the boys are, they call me James. They, we have nicknames for each other and we giggle a bit, about it. But I don't get the dad sort of thing. Tell me, what was it like you said your daughter, when she turned 18, she took on your name. Like that's a big step for her. Have you talked to her about that and what her decision making was around that, or what's been the feedback there?
So I guess the backstory on that is, growing up, my older sister wasn't my dad's child, but my dad adopted her. And when my parents got divorced, she didn't want anything to do with my dad, completely wrote my dad off, and he raised her since the time she was 1 to the time she was 18. And she wrote him off, called her biological dad, who she never spoke to walk her down the aisle, didn't even send my dad an invitation. So I guess that's where things were kind of tough for me, because I thought about adopting him. I thought about it over and over and over again, but every time I would, that would jump to the front of my mind that, oh my God, what if they destroy me? What if
that cycle repeats? Yeah.
Right. So the dynamic in that was, or I guess that my thought process in that was protection. I ended up going to protecting myself, and I wasn't really thinking about anything else.
Yep.
And she kept asking. When she turned 17, she started asking, and we started talking about it. And I told her, I said, you know what, Dest, I can't. I mean, especially at this point, what's really the point? And she goes, well, I don't want to graduate with the other name. I want to graduate with your name because you guys are the ones who got me there. I want to graduate with that name.
Yeah.
So she turned 18 in December before she graduated, and we started the process of her changing her name it was like, I think October, and they told us just to wait because she'll be 18 and then we don't need his signature to write off on it.
Yeah.
And I just told her, I said, don't worry about it. I'll pay for it. We'll rush it through. We'll do whatever we can to make sure that your name is completely changed for your diploma. And we did. We got it all done, and it was pretty amazing for her to bring the papers to me and show me that her name was changed. And she was so excited to go get her driver's license with the right name on it, to go get Social Security number changed, just get everything changed over. It was almost like I watched just a weight lift off of her, like she just had this. And then talking about it later, one of the big reasons why she wanted to drop that name was the stigma that came with it from her dad being in trouble and going to prison, and just basically all that stuff. And then she could have easily went to her mom's maiden name and that side of the family's name, but she felt like she wanted to have the same name as us.
Yeah, wow. That must be a huge thing for you to kind of swallow as well. Oh,
yeah, it was a great honor. I mean,
yeah,
for her to want my name versus any name. I mean, essentially at this point when you're changing your name, you could change your whole name. You could be whoever the hell you want to be.
Yeah, I mean, the whole kind of tagline, and really, beyond a tagline, the whole purpose of this podcast is really leaders raising leaders. And obviously you did a pretty damn good leadership job there, Deric, to have her, step into that and feel proud to, carry your name. So I take my hat off to you there, mate. That doesn't happen every day. You do hear about it, but that doesn't happen every day. Tell me, do they still have, and we haven't spoken about the younger one there, but, do they still have connection with their dad?
The older one, has no connection. The younger one sees her dad about once a year, and she sees his parents all the time, his parents come over to the house, they hang out, they're great people.
Yeah.
And just it's always just been really good with them.
Yep. Yep. It's, I know that might be I'm sure that's probably a strained kind of situation with people, in that, being incarcerated and that sort of thing. And there's obviously grandparents involved and that sort of stuff, but it's great to hear that you're able to kind of bridge that gap with those. Did that take a bit of kind of work, or was it a natural thing from your end to go, you know what, you've got to connect with these guys and kind of, make it a part of your world as well?
It took a lot of work because I felt like, when she used to go over there when she was younger, and I guess she still does it now, when she goes over and spends time with them, she comes back and has a bit of an attitude, like, I don't have to listen to you. You're not my dad type thing, even though she still calls me dad. And like the other night, we got in a huge argument because she was just back talking her mom over and over and over again.
Yep.
And she told us that she wanted to go live with her dad, the guy that she doesn't even know.
Right.
So that was a little tough. So I mean, I've had it from both extremes. I've had the one that holds me up on a pedestal, and the one that kind of says, fuck you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot we're on.
No, that's perfectly fine. It's it is like that. Even in my boys, I know, there's one that's just the boy I know that's going to challenge me till the day I drop, and there's the other one that's, kind of willing and able to support me in whatever views I think going forward. I think that's part of the challenge and part of the stuff all parents have to deal with. I don't think anyone gets off scot-free with two kids that agree all the way to the grave. It'd be too easy. I mean, if it was that easy, everyone would be doing it, but it's not the way. So, what's been for you like the one big thing, like the big shift for you personally? Having to take on stepkids, and then all the things that you've obviously been with them for a long time now. But what do you see as kind of the biggest shift for you personally?
I try not to act like they're not my kids. I mostly try to think of that there's not that option of going somewhere else, and so I dig in and try to work on it from the bottom up. It's so much easier to just give up when you think, oh, they could just go somewhere else for a little while and see how terrible it is.
Yeah,
or how much different it might be, or things like that. You're not going to get the same things that you get from me, from him, or things like that. It's an easy cop-out. And one of the big shifts that I had to make was to get that straight in my mind first, that there isn't another option. This is your home. This is where you live. We need to deal with this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because it is easy. Like, I know that I feel that myself sometimes, and it's like, you just don't want to deal with things.
Mm-hmm.
There is you've got to actually shut that door on there being a different way out.
Yep. Because, I mean, it's just back to the leadership thing. I mean, you're teaching your kids everything that you want them to learn, and if you teach them to take the easy way out and to cop out, I mean, that's not what we're trying to do.
No, I mean that's like it's the foundation, isn't it? It's you kind of you. I mean, and I'd be a fool to say that no one's thought of that before, but we all think of taking the easy road out. Everyone likes to. There's a big kind of. You hear all the commentary on social media and whatever, and never quit and all this sort of stuff. But everyone at some stage has thought of quitting, And
oh, absolutely.
And really, we need to, like you say, to teach our kids not to quit on each other and not to quit on family, not to quit on relationships, not to quit on, kind of fixing a problem in that way, to do with relationships, I think is a massive thing. So, it's a great reminder to throw that in there.
Yeah.
So, Deric, for you, like, you obviously, dealing with, two kids, their parent, like their dad's not in the best situation, having the benefit of, one wanting to, or putting you on a pedestal, as you start saying, kind of taking your name, the other one kind of rejecting and fighting against and all that sort of stuff. What's been the one big thing that you've had to let go of?
My ego. 100% my ego, because, bringing ego into that type of relationship just lights a fire and causes more issues.
Yeah.
So, I'm the adult. Yeah, I've lived here longer. I've been here. I make the money. I do the things. I support you. But throwing that in their face and just being egotistical and jumping all over their shit all the time and telling them that they're wrong and they suck isn't, and I'm not saying that guys do that, but it's something that I actually have to fight. It's an internal battle that I have to fight when they start back talking. Who the fuck are you to back talk me? I'm the guy that makes everything for you. I'm the guy that does everything for you. Who are you? You know what? So I have to fight that battle internally before I open my mouth to them.
Yeah. Yeah. Shit, I know that for myself. I grew up in that, where my dad was a bit of a tyrant, grew up in a rough household. And, for me, automatically, I go to that. And it's a real internal battle for me not to, pass that down the line, as we were saying earlier. That subconsciously,
right.
you want to jump back at them. You want to let ego roar and, control and be that, domineering arsehole. But that's a tough one. I don't think, I think a lot of men would kind of relate to that and agree with you there that that's something you got to kind of keep in check.
Right. It's definitely a tough battle because, coming from the Marine Corps where, you're pumped up on ego, it's all about being this big guy. But that's one of the other things that I learned when I was in the Marine Corps is I had one of my guys come to me that I was on the same level as, and then I rose above him, and him coming to me and telling me that I had completely changed and that I was doing things a whole lot different. And, I really didn't even register that conversation until I had been out for a couple of years, and it started to click, and I was like, oh my gosh, who the hell was I? What was I doing? Where was I going?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's an interesting one. It is like you say, like a subconscious thing that we it's on autopilot, and where we get that, that differs for everyone. But something to definitely for guys out there to keep a check of and understand that it's, I would say it's in all of us.
It is.
And some control it, better than others.
Oh, absolutely. And some definitely don't.
And that's true. And like you said, no judgment here. It's, everyone has their own path, and, I'm certainly not perfect. I don't think, I don't think there's too many perfect fathers out there. It's all just a learning,
absolutely not.
Just a learning game. We're all, and that's why we're here. That's kind of why I created this. It's like no one's having these conversations out in the marketplace openly, and step parenting is a totally different thing compared to normal parenting. There's plenty of those conversations, but it's good that we can kind of have the a different conversation. Tell me, how do you deal with, and I kind of want to ask this just out of the blue and a little bit differently, how do you deal with discipline in your household? It's been an interesting conversation. Some say, okay, I'll let the mother do that. Some say I step in. For me, I try, and to me, my boys are my boys. There's no real kind of grey line. I just treat them as my own. And I always have, and I kind of discipline from that aspect of, you know what, if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me kind of thing. I expect,
right.
I try to live by my word, and if I'm doing something, then I'm going to pass it down. How do you go about that, like discipline? Because it can be difficult, in a step-parent relationship.
Right. I'm pretty much like you. I'm straight across the board as far as everybody kind of gets the same punishment no matter what. But I guess where I've gotten lucky is my wife is mostly the disciplinarian. I'm kind of held back as the bulldog. So if you keep doing this and keep going at your mom, then I come in.
Right. Right.
Yeah. But I mean, something that I've done for years is I call it the electric chair. It's wall sits with your hands out till you shake.
Yep. I'll have to try that one. That's a good one.
Yeah, I've had all the kids lined up on the same wall together doing it. So I mean, it's when they were in trouble, just stuck them all up on the wall and had them doing the wall sit. So.
That's a good one. We've got in our household, I normally go to, you either get thrown in the pool or you're doing squats or push-ups. The latest one has been riding lines, but the electric chair, I'll have to remember that one.
Yeah, it's pretty fantastic. They figure it out real quick when everything starts burning.
It's funny, and as I said, I grew up in a really rough household, so I actually don't want any, I don't hit my kids, I don't plan on it, I don't want to do that, and I try to come up with, kind of discipline that's more consequences than actual rough or hard discipline. It's more of a, just kind of shaking them out of their current reality. Like I say, if they're being crazy, I'll grab them, bundle them up, and I'll throw them in the pool. And at the moment here, it's pretty cold, so they kind of wake up to themselves pretty quickly. But it's just interesting to hear how different people go about it and different ideas on that. As I said, I don't like, discipline doesn't need to be a harsh thing. I think it just needs to be more of an awareness than an actual discipline.
In the warrior way, you just call it a shift move. You're doing a forced shift move.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just get a new kind of perspective on things. Freezing cold water does that really well. But so you've obviously been with them a long time now, and how's been your relationship, and how's that changed over the years? And not so much just with the kids, but even with your wife. Are you concerned? What's happened there over the years?
When I first came to our relationship and was when we first started dating and first got married, for I would say the first 4 or 5 years that we were together, it was I didn't step up and say anything. I kept back and let her do everything, and even when it was overboard, I still just didn't. I held myself back from that dynamic of discipline and things like that. Never because she asked me to or told me to. I just didn't feel right. I almost felt scared. I don't know. It was it was tough. And then as I started to accept this, hey, they're my kids, I'm raising these kids. As I started to accept that, it got easier and easier to sit down and have conversations with them and coach them and start to talk to them and get them through different situations and discipline.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's just the the learnings as we go along progress, and some get easier, some get tougher. It's you've got to have for me, having that long view has been a big benefit to just being able to keep it all in perspective.
Right.
Tell me, Deric, like, what's, for you and, for your family, what do you see, how do you see it evolving going forward?
I just keep seeing it get better. The more honest I am with them, the more honest they are with me. The more honest I am with myself, the better our whole situation is. I mean, we've had our ups and downs. We've had our things that we need to work on, and it seems like every time that we work through something, we end up stronger and stronger and stronger. So it's like I've told them over and over and over again, even if your mom and I didn't work out, you're still my kids. You can still come to me. You can still ask me for things. I see it getting stronger and stronger.
Yeah, nice. It's interesting. Like you said, you can't open that door. You can't just go, okay, I'm out of here. I'm going to drop the ball here. You've got to teach your kids that, and I think passing that on to them allows them to know they're in a secure and safe relationship, and I think that is key in leadership. Being able to know that the person leading the way is actually solid. So many people these days are very weak. They're very, I call them flip-floppers. They're one decision 1 minute and they're a different decision another minute.
Right.
It's very easy these days in this day and age, with divorce rates so high, they're, just under 50%, I think, here in Australia. And, it seems that at the first little bit of trouble, there's a divorce, and I don't think,
right.
If we are being leaders, that's not the way to lead. Teaching people that the best option out is just to run away.
Exactly. Yeah. We definitely don't want to teach anyone to run away, especially my upbringing and my wife's upbringing. I mean, it's just been that's one of the biggest things is communication between you and your wife, and knowing that you guys are on the same page and going forward with the same type of disciplines, the same type of vision. Because if you don't communicate and you're not on the same wavelength, it can really cause some issues.
Yeah, and that's a tough one. I know, me and my partner Leonie, we've had our issues there, and we've kind of been fortunate enough to break through those, but they keep popping up. Little differences in opinion and differences in thought on where the direction's going, that sort of stuff. I think it's a continual one as people evolve. And that, like you say, that communication level is key to overcoming that. I'll wrap this up shortly, but I was just going to say, is there anything that you have, Deric, as maybe a tip for the guys out there in keeping that communication at a high level? I mean, you've obviously done that. You can see that in kind of your leadership and your kids, your older one wanting to take on your name and obviously doing that. You're obviously leading the way at home. Tell me, is there any one thing that you could pass on to the guys that is something that they could take to their families and kind of, I guess, step forward with, lead the way with in their families?
Right. The one thing that I'd want them to remember is, I would say the ego, checking the ego and realizing that just because you have an idea doesn't mean that it's the best idea. And not thinking that their idea is the worst idea, because that's something that I've caught myself doing over and over and over again when they're going to discipline or going to, if we have a disagreement as far as something that the girls could go do with a boy or whatever. And one of the biggest things is to communicate about it. Like right now, my 15-year-old is dating or I guess she'll be 15, is dating a 17-year-old boy that's a senior that I had a huge issue with, but after communicating and talking through it, we actually came up with a plan and went and talked with his parents. So it was us and them and the two kids there, and laying down ground rules and what we expected and how we felt about everything, and to let them know that we were all watching type thing.
Yeah.
But it was it's tough, because there's times when you don't check the ego and you just have diarrhea of the mouth, and you puke all over yourself.
Sure.
But it's all about communication after that, letting them know where your mind was at, and letting them know where that you had their best interest in mind, that you were trying to take care of them and your wife as well. You're always in protect mode.
Yeah, and I think that's the key thing there, like having best interests in mind, not just your own egotistical interests. Right. Yeah,
absolutely.
I think that's a great reminder. It's a great thing for guys, and anyone out there listening to kind of check in with their own ego. I know, I have to do it myself on occasion, and I'm sure that there's plenty of guys out there listening that'll kind of, that one will hit home for them. But Deric, I just want to say thanks again for being on the call today. It's been great to catch up. I look forward to seeing you in just a couple of weeks' time in Huntington Beach. And
yeah, sounds fantastic.
Yeah, thanks again for sharing with all the stepdads.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Would you like to learn more about how stepdads across the globe are joining forces in raising the next generation of leaders? Then head to www.stepdadsuccess.com and grab all the show notes, plus a copy of the brand new tactical guide for creating more happiness, health, wealth, and wisdom as a stepdad. And if you liked the podcast, please share it with other stepdads you know and leave us a review on iTunes. Again, that's www.stepdadsuccess.com for all the show notes and tactical guide. Come and join the new breed of stepdads, the growing group of leaders raising leaders.